Made a few changes in plans yesterday and figured out how we're gonna fit this freaking turbo in this freaking car without cutting everything up. Man, I can't believe we ordered this like last night at like 7 o'clock and it was already on my door this morning. We were a little bit short on boost couplers, matching, black ones. We got some of those. We needed one of these cast elbows to weld out of the turbo, the boost inlet essentially into the turbo. We're going to cut the turbo off shorter and put this on there. That way it'll be tighter up in the car, not hit so many of the lines that are underneath it. It'll give us a little bit more space. See more boost stuff. Reducer coupler, because the throttle body is kind of weird size. It's like 2 3/4 to 2.5 inch pipe, so we had to get a reducer coupler. Mishimoto, I didn't even know Mishimoto made these. Okay, let's see what else we got. Oh man, and this is the biggest one. This one is so big. So, I'll show you in a second, but the turbo, the outlet where the exhaust is going to go down, hits the ABS module. So we decided that we're going to install a new proportioning valve so that we can adjust our front and rear bias, and we are going to take out the ABS module itself. It's like this huge box. I'll show you in just a second, but it's really not such a big deal. It's just a bunch of lines and crap to deal with, but we'll be able to clean up a bunch of stuff, I think, depending on how we move the lines, and we can install this proportioning valve, and yeah, still should be pretty cool. So I'll show you right now what it looks like in the engine bay and how it's going to create space for us. Okay, we're out here by this car, and I was going to show you guys the ABS unit, and the turbo is sitting in place so you can see what I'm talking about. But we really just we had to make a decision. We're going to have to cut this manifold up and retry to fabricate, move the turbo up in the car, or we had to move the ABS. So we finally decided, just move the ABS. It's a big ugly unit anyway. Here, check this out. Okay, so right down here is, you can see the turbo, and you can see where the exhaust outlet would be, and it literally comes straight into this unit. Like, there's no way to get around it. It's just basically gonna smack right into it. So this entire thing is the ABS unit, and it goes all the way down. There's a huge bracket along the side. We'll be able to move all that out of the car now once we move the lines. So the thing is, we still have all these lines to deal with that go across the whole firewall here, but realistically all that's actually needed is we have 2 lines out. One goes to the front brakes, one goes to the rear brakes, and if you look down here in the car, there's this little junction right here. This one line goes down under and out to the rear brake. So you run the 2 lines in from the master, these 2 lines go in, and then it has 3 lines out, which means 1 line goes to the rear and 2 split to the front. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of a lot of spidering of brake lines, but basically it'll allow us to adjust the front and rear separately. So pretty cool. Okay, with that being said, I'm probably going to go ahead and just start pulling this ABS unit right now. So hang tight, we'll be back in a minute and I'll explain basically what happened. Okay, so after fidgeting around with these brake lines for like quite a while, I got everything to fit. And I mean, I guess I won't know if it leaks or anything until I put some fluid in it and pressurize it, but most of the time with the inverted flare, as long as it's seated flat against the surface and your flare was done good, it'll probably seal up. So this is kind of the final result. And some of these bends you'll see are like pretty swoopy. They're just kind of bent by hand. They make a really fancy tool that bends these radiuses like super tight without crimping it or anything like that, but this is totally adequate for now. There's a chance we may move it again in the future depending on what we end up doing, with his setup for like finalizing it or whatnot, but for now it's completely out of the way, and we can proportion the front and the rear correctly, and the ABS, that huge module that was taking up this whole space, is now gone. So now we'll have much more room for the turbo and the downpipe and everything else. Okay, we got all the brake lines to stop leaking, which is really good. I'm happy about that. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought. It was only really leaking on 2 places. No big deal. Got that sorted. Okay, next thing. I don't know if you guys have ever taken turbos apart yourself, but not like all the way apart. But in case you don't know, when you go to install them into a car or a different application, a lot of times these turbo covers, the front cover or the rear housing here, they'll need to be turned a different way to fit your specific application. So, I mean, in case you're wondering, like, you know, you don't want to take something apart because it'll fall apart or something, it doesn't. You can take the covers out without actually messing anything to do with the internal mechanisms, like all your bearings and bushings and all the stuff that's inside the actual turbocharger. So you can loosen up what they call the center section and take, this center section is actually called the CHRA if you're looking it up by part number, but basically we can pull this cover off or this cover off and have just the center floating by itself. This gives us the ability to rotate this side independent from this side, so we can put them in the right position. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now and then situate it in the car and start figuring out where the outlet needs to come for the cold side. Okay, so I got this sitting in here and I really like the way it sits when it's like up just slightly higher than in the actual turbo manifold sits it. So we got this flange from Precision that sandwiches between the turbo and the manifold, and I'm gonna use that to kind of reposition and move the turbo up. And then once we get out to this point, this is like the only way that the actual like manifold will fit, or the front of the turbo will fit. So I'm hoping that once I cut this off and move a few more things like the harness and some of these lines maybe out of the way a little bit, I can get it to rotate down because I think it'll look a lot better. Worst case scenario, it'll shorten, it'll come straight across, go down into these down into this hole here. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and fix this turbo manifold and just kind of start there. Okay, so I'm playing around with the positioning of this turbo a little bit. Since I have that Precision T3 flange to space it or rotate it or move it, I can just weld the new flange on at any angle I want and make the turbo sit exactly perfect for me. And playing with it a little bit more, I'm really excited because I got it to fit to where the cover points down the way that I wanted. I'll show you real quick, check it out. Okay, so you can see here, the turbo is now like, it's kind of like looking straight at us, which aesthetically, it just kind of pleases me to see it looking right at us. And I feel like with a little bit of welding, we'll cut this off and weld our pipe coming through this area here. That'll be nice to have the intercooler piping start kind of low instead of starting over at the top over here. So now I'm really excited about this. Also, rotating the flange gave us a lot of room over here to keep things cool, like the wiring harness, and it gave us like room for where the power steering kind of needs to go and stuff. So all in all, this is awesome. I'm pretty excited. I'm gonna weld this up. That's gonna be the position of our turbo. All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a break on the Silvia for a minute and do a little Honda single cam dynoing. We started this car last week, but we were missing a sensor. The intake air temperature sensor was broken, so we got that sorted out and put some new spark stuff on because it was kind of misfiring a little bit. And we're hoping to see some good stock single cam numbers, you know, which is like anything over 200 would be great, or like perfect. So let me show you guys the car right now. Pretty basic intercooler kit. Like we trimmed up some of these pipes and put new bead rolls on them last week, just so that it wasn't like dragging on the ground because it was pretty low. And he really needs to get a wastegate dump right in this general area, because the gas coming out of here, if it goes into the inlet of the turbo, will actually make the car slower. So we need to sort that out, get that vented away from the turbo. But the rest of the setup is actually, it's pretty good. He's on, I think, Mitsubishi DSM 450cc injectors. They're older ones, but they're working just fine. And we changed the wires to like the actual NGKs. These are a game changer. These things last like probably the length of your whole car almost, and they always deliver really, really good spark. So hopefully these will take care of the problem, and we can make it through the whole dyno session this time and make some horsepower. Okay, all done dynoing that, and we made 192 horsepower, which is it's pretty good for a 1.6 on about 8 pounds of boost. Can't ask for too much more. It's pretty conservative. I want him to be able to drive around, have fun, and beat the crap out of it, and not worry about it breaking. So this will definitely do that for now. Yeah, essentially if you put a bigger map sensor on it, we could go past 2 pounds of boost. We could go to like 20. Update on the Silvia really quick before I go home and before this battery dies like at 11%. We were able to kind of figure out where the turbo goes, which we're kind of working on getting the oil line fitting. The return fitting is like on and actually done as well. I still have to build the downpipe that comes out of the turbo. We kind of got all the intake manifold stuff pretty much situated and the radiator hoses on. So things are moving along quite well. Injectors are in, we primed the pump, they don't leak, everything's good there. So really, we're basically down to finishing the intercooler piping up to the turbo and over to the throttle body, and finishing the downpipe. And I have kind of an interesting surprise on the downpipe, but I don't want to tell you guys till next week because, well, I don't know. I'll have lots to show you next week, basically. So, all right, I guess that's pretty much the full update. Yeah. Hang tight, and then we'll see what we're doing on this downpipe. It's something I've never done ever on a downpipe before. And I've done a lot of exhausts, so you guys can maybe try to guess. But all right, we'll see you guys next week.